Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, the bad times are killing me. This is Bad Times at the El Royale. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I am Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Bad Times at the El Royale, which we'll be talking about today. Very exciting.
Yes.
Are you in California or Nevada tonight, Ian?
I'm in California, but I'm thinking about stepping over that line.
Well, if you need a drink, you got to stay in California. Am I remembering that correctly?
Okay, fuck Nevada.
Staying in Cali. Anyway, how are you doing this week, Ian?
In some good news, I was finally able to take a short vacation with my romantic partner, who is a feral wolf, and the hotel was nice, but the experience was ruined. It felt like someone was watching us the whole time.
Oh boy, bad news, Ian. Somebody was watching, and they probably got you on video, so you might want to...
shit. I'm going to go burn that place down.
Well, I have some good news for you. Somebody beat you to it, so I wouldn't worry.
Oh, never mind. Then it was a good time. I'm glad we got away.
Whew, it is a sweaty night in the northeast of the United States this evening. I am starting to feel the beads forming on my forehead already, and we're only 2 minutes and 50 seconds into recording. It's going to be a struggle, but you know what? This is a movie I've been looking forward to covering. I'm excited about it. I'm passionate about it. I'm going to suck it up.
It's going to be cake because, first of all, the movie is short as hell. Second of all, we have nothing to say about it, so probably going to breeze right through this.
Very small, inconsequential cast.
Yeah, hardly
It's not a twisty narrative.
Yeah.
In and out. Now we're going to be in the booth here for a good long while. Before we get into Bad Times at the El Royale, did you have any good times in your living room watching a movie this week that you want to tell us about?
I did. I had great times. I watched a movie called Cha-Cha Real Smooth.
To the left now, y'all. To the right now, y'all.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't hear the title of this movie without hearing that voice in your head, which just starts you off in a good mood. It's a brand new movie out on Apple TV Plus for those who have that. And it's really fun. It gave me so many feelings. I love the writer, director, star, this young kid named Cooper Raiff. He's 25 years old. I hadn't seen his one other movie before, but now I want to go back and see that.
Shithouse, I believe it's called. It was really good.
Yeah, he's good at naming films with catchy titles. I love the other actors in it. Dakota Johnson, who I didn't even realize how many movies I had seen with her, so I didn't know if I liked her. Today's movie included, which I like her in as well. But I loved her in this. This young actor, Vanessa Berghardt, who plays the Dakota Johnson character's daughter, Lola. Excellent in it. Just really cool cast. Strangely, though, after loving it, I went to read the reviews. Half the critics hated it. They were so mad at this movie. They were like, this kid shouldn't get to win at life. Life's not that easy. Life's not like this. Fuck this guy. But the thing is, for me, okay, maybe life is not like this, but movies are like this. And Cooper Raiff is really good at making movies. He writes these heart-tugging story arcs for all the characters. In some ways, it's a very classical film, romance, family drama with tons of great comedy, but there's so much fresh stuff in it. All these fun scenes with moments where like you recognize that bit of human behavior, but you've never seen it quite that way on screen before. He's just really good at making movies, and it's pretty impressive to me at his age, and it just really worked on me. So I was a big fan of Cha-Cha Real Smooth. Y'all.
No, I haven't seen Cha-Cha yet, to be clear. When I heard the title, I said to myself, it was a movie about a fucking wedding DJ, and lo and behold, kind of is, right?
Kind of is. Yeah, bar mitzvah DJ, dance party facilitator.
I think I've seen more criticism of this movie, and when I say criticism, I mean negative criticism of this movie, from people that have seen both his movies. Now, we're in a unique position because I've seen the first one, and you've seen the second one, but I think Sean Fennessy from The Big Picture was the one who had this kind of take that it seems like maybe he's got one trick, and when you've seen them both in quick succession, because Shithouse only came out in 2020, I think. It wasn't out for a long time before he got this greenlit. And some criticism about he knows how to write for himself, obviously. Like, he understands the characters he plays, and they're believable, but maybe the other characters in his movies don't have the ring of sincerity to them as much. And I can't speak to that because I haven't seen Cha-Cha Real Smooth yet. I do love the balls on this 25-year-old kid to just be like, yeah, I'm going to write a movie where I'm romantically involved with Dakota Johnson.
Yeah, it's ballsy. And I get it. That alone could generate pushback, but I fell for it. I fell for her. I fell for him. I fell for the whole story.
Unrelated, I'm writing myself a movie where I'll be a star, and I will be dating both Scarlett Johansson and Ana de Armas.
Nice.
So we have that to look forward to. No, but Shithouse is like everything you just said about Cha-Cha Real Smooth could pretty much apply. Okay. So maybe he does have a wheelhouse of what he's comfortable making, but there's been plenty of auteurs that have stayed in the same territory for most of their career and had success.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that's a reason to dismiss him.
No.
I had a very different movie to bring to show show and tell. I'm throwing it way back to my childhood, because there is a new video game out called Shredder's Revenge.
Okay.
Which is a remastering of those old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games, like Turtles in Time from the early 90s, the Turtles arcade game, which I was a huge fan of. And I bought it because my son's 5, and I was like, this is a game he could probably play. There's like 2 or 3 buttons you got to memorize to know what to do. And we've been playing a ton of it and having fun. So I was like, I think I can show him the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from like 1990, the one where they were wearing like 400-pound latex turtle suits, and they had like real martial artists playing the turtles, none of the CGI crap.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was I was not prepared for how serious the movie takes itself. I think I mostly remembered the second movie, Secret of the Ooze, which is a much sillier, kid-focused movie. The first Turtles movie, I'm not going to call it gritty. It's got like this almost realistic approach to the situation. Obviously, it's relatively realistic because they're still turtles, and they go out in public by just wearing a trench coat and a little fedora, and like no one notices that they're giant turtles. But like the violence has consequences in the movie. They get in a big fight with the Foot Clan, and Raphael gets a shit kicked out of him. And I feel like in most kids' movies, he'd be back up the next day ready to go. But no, they retreat to a farm in upstate New York for a month while he recuperates in like a bathtub.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is fucking bleak. They're all like praying over his body. Jack's like, I'm a little scared.
Yeah, that sounds scary. Does he get addicted to painkillers, or does it not go quite that dark?
I think he's literally in a coma most of the time, so he didn't have the chance. And then he wakes up and he's fine, and they go back and kick everyone's butt. But this is a little much for a 5-year-old, I think.
Serious, yeah.
I was taken aback by that. So now, like, maybe we should watch the second one. It's more funny. It's a little sillier. It's got the Vanilla Ice rap song. Okay. And, but yeah, I think my son's slightly traumatized from the first Turtles movie. So
man. I hope he gets over it so he eventually gets on board with your turtle love.
He loves the Turtles. We play the games. He says all the catchphrases, Cowabunga and Radical. Maybe I'll show him the newer movies. They're probably not as scary. But enough about the Turtles. Let's talk about Bad Times at the El Royale. This is a movie I remember when it was coming out. I want to get it out of the way. This movie has a fantastic trailer. I don't know if you checked it out ahead of this.
I did.
I love the trailer. I was on board with this movie immediately. And then I cannot remember the exact circumstances. I bought tickets to this movie, did not go. Don't think I ever got a refund. So I gave them some of my money. Okay. I didn't see it in theaters. I think maybe I didn't realize how long it was. And I had the previous engagement. Like I was like, oh, I can see the movie and then I can go to this thing after. And then I was like, oh shit, it's 2.5 hours. I can't actually do that. That sounds familiar. But anyway, as soon as it came to streaming, I ordered it. I paid my $5.99 to watch it on streaming and really enjoyed it. What did you remember about this movie? Did you have any familiarity with it? Did you heard about it?
I heard enough about it. And I think I just saw TV commercials. I just got that little tease of it and I was intrigued. I'm like, oh, this could be something that I like. I like spooky, moody crime mysteries. And I didn't go to see it in the theaters, but I watched it when it came out on streaming for free and I liked it. But there's a caveat. I didn't enjoy it then the way I did now in my rewatches because not knowing what it was and being the kind of scaredy cat that I was, there's a point in the movie, if you don't know what it is, you think it could be tilting over into torture porn. There is suddenly some creepy stuff and a concrete tunnel, an atmosphere of danger where I was too scared watching this movie the first time is what I'm trying to say. That I actually didn't enjoy the fun of it, the thrill of it, exploring the mystery of it because I was on the edge of my seat that it was about to turn bloody and horrify me into a coma.
It's not a movie that is sans blood, to be clear. No. There are some bloody moments in this. There's certainly some violence throughout the film, and violence looms over the movie even when it's not being enacted on screen. There's always the threat of violence or the specter of past violence is constantly being brought up. That being said, I don't think it's a movie that revels in violence. I think it's disgusted by it in the long run.
It's a fun crime mystery, and yeah, there's going to be people getting shot and bad things happening, but watching it now, I got so much more out of it because I could enjoy the mystery. I got a different spirit. I think I caught the director's spirit, Drew Goddard, hearing what he had to say about this movie, that it was a love letter to a genre, crime thrillers and noir movies that he loves, and he's just having fun with it. And maybe he got criticized for it being a little light on the message or on the meanings while still being long and complex and windy, and maybe for some people one didn't pay off the other, but it's got a lot of fun twists and a lot of flourishes in the filmmaking and unraveling of mysteries and characters with secrets. And if you have the patience to sit through the runtime, all that stuff is just really fun, and I don't need any bigger payoff than what it gave me.
I find that to be kind of a bizarre criticism too, that the movie is a little surface level. I go to Wikipedia for movies we cover to get information about the budget, the box office. And this is the first movie I've ever seen that has just paragraphs of themes and analysis, it's called. And then there's several subheaders under that. Now, I didn't read any of them because I'm a grown up and I want to come up with my own theories, but it seems like there's a lot of depth to this movie. And you read about the process of coming up with the concept and pitching it to studios. I'm like, this feels like the culmination of his efforts as a filmmaker. Like he put everything he had into this. He seems like a thoughtful enough guy based on the screenplays he's written and the other movies he directed. The other movie he directed, which we've also covered on this podcast, unfortunately. There's enough there to be like, okay, this is a guy who knows film. He knows what he's trying to say, and he's talented enough to get it across. So yeah, I don't buy that criticism. I've read some of the same out there. I just think it's a little misguided.
Goddard himself said it's a love letter. And when directors make love letter films to genres that they like, they can sometimes be overindulgent. He does throw a lot in this movie. He packs a ton in. He's very skillful, though. And none of that bothered me. I liked going on the journey with him.
Agreed. Like we mentioned, there was some interesting steps taken by Goddard before the movie got greenlit to make sure it was true to his vision. Did you want me to give you a little rundown of what all went down to get this made?
Yeah, for sure. Let's hear how this thing happened.
Okay. Following the commercial failure of his directorial debut and past Blassown episode Cabin in the Woods in 2011, Drew Goddard got back to writing. Already an acclaimed screenwriter for the found-footage monster movie Cloverfield from 2008, he would be one of 4 credited screenwriters on the Brad Pitt zombie movie World War Z before getting the sole screenwriting credit for the Matt Damon Stuck on Mars movie The Martian.
AKA the talented Mr. No Shipley.
He'd then direct the pilot for The Good Place and get back to work on a spec script for his magnum opus, an ensemble neo-noir thriller set in 1969 called Bad Times at the El Royale. He wouldn't just be writing this one, though, as he wrote it with the intention of getting back in the director's chair. Goddard meticulously planned the movie, handing over the script with both a budget and soundtrack in mind, even going so far as to tell studios not to bid on the movie if they weren't confident in their ability to secure the rights to the songs he had specified. The script was a hot commodity, and Goddard did everything he could to protect it, giving it only to top executives at studios on an iPad, which they were expected to return once they'd finished reading.
Wait, just one more level of Candy Crush, please.
A bidding war for the film ensued, and in March of 2017, 20th Century Fox bought the screenplay. With a $32 million budget, Goddard went about casting the movie. Chris Hemsworth and Jeff Bridges were the first 2 actors to be cast, with Beyonce, Tom Holland, and Cailee Spaeny being considered for roles. Spaeny would be cast, but the role Beyonce was being considered for would eventually go to Cynthia Erivo, and the Tom Holland role going to Louis Pullman. Dakota Johnson would sign on in January 2018, and Russell Crowe was cast as Laramie Seymour Sullivan / Dwight Broadbeck, but would drop out shortly before filming began and was hastily replaced by Jon Hamm. Because when you need someone to play an FBI agent, you get Jon fucking Hamm.
Coincidentally, Jon fucking Hamm, also the plot of Black Mirror.
How did they secure such a star-studded and expensive cast with a $32 million budget, you ask? Well, the script was good enough that most of the actors and even some of the crew took pay cuts to work on it. Filmed between January and April 2018 in Vancouver, British Columbia, a release date of October 12, 2018 was set, and the good buzz around the movie only strengthened when the teaser trailer was released in June of the same year. The movie opened to mostly positive reviews, with most negative criticism being directed at the 141-minute runtime.
Hey, runtime, you suck.
But a crowded box office signaled bad times for bad times, as it opened in 7th place with only $7.1 million. It would leave theaters having made just $31.9 million worldwide, and these days it's a mostly forgotten movie, though it has a growing fan base and will one day hopefully become a cult classic.
Growing is a good word. Each time I watched it, I liked it more. Might be diminishing returns if I come back to it next time, but it's good on so many levels. The writing, the filmmaking, the performances, it can definitely grow on you.
Yeah, it's not a movie I think I'll go back to every year because a lot of it's predicated on not knowing what comes next. Right. And I think you need some distance from it in order to let it surprise you again. Maybe every 5 years, I think I'd go back and watch this movie and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's
because you forget just enough of the little details that you'll still have fun with them.
Exactly.
And the rest of the time, even though you know what's coming, you'll just be interested because it's so carefully made and the performances are universally pretty good. Even the one character I know we both don't love, I wouldn't chalk it up to the performance. That's more of a grand idea I have behind the type of character that it is that I don't want to spoil yet.
Oh yeah, let's talk about spoilers before we get any further into this movie. We've revealed a little bit just by talking about the casting and the fact that some of the characters have more than one name, so they've got secrets. There's a lot of secrets in this movie. We're going to do our usual totally thorough dive through the plot point by point. So if you haven't seen this movie and you think you're going to like it, we're going to spoil quite a lot.
I think probably you will like it if it sounds like something you'd like.
Yeah.
It reads a little dense, a little convoluted when you're just reading a synopsis off the page because there's a lot of plot here and a lot of twists. I didn't find it hard to follow when I was watching it, though. It's just when you're trying to sum it up, it can be a little tricky.
It backs up and shows you the same piece of action several times, which can kind of help. So it's not one of those twisty movies that you're lost for a long time. It's pretty clear what's going on, even as weird as what's happening actually is.
Yeah, it's a mystery, but it's not a movie that's trying to trick you. There's no big reveal that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. There's a couple reveals in it, but there are hints dropped along the way. or they don't string you along for too long where you almost feel cheated.
Right.
It gets to the point relatively quickly.
I think because it's a character-focused movie, right? It's about these characters, especially the Jeff Bridges and the Cynthia Erivo characters, are the characters with the most heart and you're most rooting for in this movie. Instead of going, oh, what's under the floorboards, and the movie making a bunch of fuss over that and dragging that out as though that's going to be something really satisfying, you kind of see it from the start. It's just, who are these people and why are they motivated to act this way? And so the fun is in seeing the characters act through the mystery.
Yeah, and when it did drop something cryptic, like the floorboards, you see this guy, we'll get into it more in depth throughout the synopsis, but the first scene, this guy pulling up floorboards in a hotel and hiding something under it. I wasn't like grasping for answers. I was just like, I want to know more about this situation and I'm going to trust the movie to get me there.
Yeah, because it showed it to you in a fun way. We'll get into it as soon as we jump into the story. It was fun in itself. It wasn't the kind of movie where it just teases a mystery and you're like, oh, come on. I know you're fucking with me. Tell me what's going on. This is like, that was fun to see. Show me more.
Right. The mystery is not the point. The trip the movie takes you on to reveal the mystery is more fun than the reveal of the mystery itself, which is, I think, just a sign of a good plotted out movie.
We are revealing just how much we liked it. And you might hear us reveling in this throughout the show because we've been through some episodes where we didn't like the movies very much. So it's kind of fun. It's a juicy movie. We'll just get to tell you about all the cool things we liked.
All right, let's jump into it. Why don't you walk us through the first section of the film?
All right. Stop me if you've heard this before. A priest, a traveling salesman, and an R&B singer walk into a hotel. Played by Jeff Bridges, John Hamm, and Cynthia Erivo, respectively. It's the El Royale, a once swanky hotel straddling the California-Nevada border that's now a lonely shell of its former glory. The one remaining employee, a timid clerk named Miles, played by Louis Pullman, checks everyone into their own rooms, including a late-arriving hippie named Emily, played by Dakota Johnson. The salesman, turns out he's an undercover FBI agent who discovers a secret passage behind the front desk with two-way mirrors looking into each room. From there, he sees Darlene the singer rehearsing. He sees Father Flynn tearing up his floorboards, and he sees Emily holding a younger girl captive tied to a chair. Everyone's got secrets.
Ain't that the fucking truth? Let's talk about this opening montage, because it doesn't get a ton of play in the synopsis here, but probably the first 3 minutes of the movie is just one static shot of a guy, like we previously mentioned. We don't necessarily know it at the time. You could tell if you squint, but it's Nick Offerman, and he is moving all the furniture in this hotel room to one side, tearing up the floorboards, hiding a bag, and then he sits and waits. It feels very much like a stage play. Did you get that vibe?
It's kind of strange because it's this very straight on flat shot from a distance. You never get in close to see his face. It's all from the same angle, which we don't know at the time is the angle of looking through the two-way mirror on that hotel room. You only get a hint of it at the very end when his blood splashes against the mirror. But it's super fun and it's done. This is what we were talking about. It's done in this really fun way. There's this cheery song playing. It's 26 Miles Across the Sea by the Four Preps. Happy little ditty. And the montage is cut to the music. I felt like it was shades of Edgar Wright. You see very few directors actually cut to the rhythm of songs like that. And that just made the scene really fun because there's a dark subject, a guy in a trench coat burying loot in a hotel room, but with fun music.
It's the perfect word for it too, is loot. It's not just money. It's ill-gotten.
It's definitely loot.
The bag might as well have had a little dollar sign on the side of it. Like,
it's some old-timey bank robbers shit.
Sure is. And I was getting a little nervous with the first time I saw this movie with the static camera, because that's not a filmmaking style I can tolerate for a whole 2 hours. If you've seen like Dogville or Mandalay by Lars Van Trier, which are kind of like stage plays that are just shot as movies, I don't like that style. So I was starting to get a little nervous, but then the rest of the movie is shot very stylishly.
Yeah.
So this is really just setting the tone. And I wonder I guess you nailed it. The reason to film it that way is to give us a hint that maybe these guys are being surveilled.
Because they don't make anything out of it. And actually, it's pretty clear later on that no one but us was on the other side of that mirror at that time, or
would have been claimed.
The hotel people would have dug up that loot long ago. But yeah, I think they make that little nod because at the end of that cheery music montage, his partner shows up at the door and blasts him with the shotgun and some blood sprays across the mirror.
Terribly thought out plan, though, by the partner, because now he doesn't know where the fucking money is.
I know. He didn't bother to hold his buddy hostage and say, what'd you do with your share of the loot?
At first, I was like, I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be Jeff Bridges.
Right.
Or what, but no, that's their third member who he gets a name, but I don't remember it and I don't really care. And then there's a flurry of activity as everyone in the present day of this movie, which is 1969, starts arriving at the hotel. Kind of funny for a hotel with only like 4 guests to have all 4 of them arrive simultaneously.
What are the odds? I guess only in the movies.
But a very, very cool shot of Darlene arriving where we're trailing the car very closely. It gave me some like PTA vibes. I don't know. It felt like Boogie Nights a little bit.
Yeah, like you said, it immediately makes up for its one piece of static camera work with a bunch of really dynamic camera work, tracking the car action. And then pretty close after, we're going to talk about the long one shot in the secret hallway. But yeah, that's super exciting. The music switches in a very clever way. It switches from 26 Miles Across the Sea to a song called 25 Miles by Edwin Starr, who did War. You probably know that song from him. Good God, y'all. That's a personal favorite of mine. 25 Miles is such a killer song. And I was like, that put me in a great mood at the beginning of this movie.
I'm not a acolyte of the 60s, so some of the songs were new to me. Obviously, the big hits I knew already, but the soundtrack is just great. Not just at putting you in this place and time, but it's just a great soundtrack. I've been listening to it on and off for the last couple of days as I do work around the house. And it really is a killer soundtrack. You could tell he put a lot of thought and care into the different songs that come up in the movie. They don't all have a lot of thematic tie to the movie, but just, I don't know, the mood they set, the things they evoke in your mind all apply to the scenes.
They just work. They're not trying to be literal, but they all just bring something nice. It's a jukebox movie, and your explanation of the making of it made a lot of sense, which I didn't know until after I saw it again, how important the specific set of songs were to him, because it is a jukebox movie. And then we go into the lobby of the El Royale, and sure enough, at the head of this big dividing line, the California-Nevada border that runs right through the center of the hotel, it culminates in a shiny Wurlitzer jukebox in a sort of an altar. It's almost a religious setup there, that it's the spiritual center of this hotel and of the movie.
Let's talk about the El Royale a little bit, because it's driven home time and again that this is a real piece of shit hotel. This is a dump. Its best days are behind it. This hotel is fucking awesome, and I would pay like a lot of money to stay here.
It's super cool. It's got this story where it lost its gaming license. It used to be a totally hip swinging spot. The showroom was frequented by the stars of the day. Dean Martin and Sinatra were singing there, and then it just dried right up. But it's basically like Disneyland after hours. It's a fucking awesome space. It just happens to be totally deserted.
Yeah, I would totally go and sit in the lobby and pour myself a drink while Miles is doing whatever he's up to.
Yeah, he gets a little distracted in the back closet there.
Good old Lewis Pullman. He had Top Gun Maverick this year. We just talked about his dad quite a bit on the Independence Day pod.
Yeah, is this the first time we've had two generations in the zone?
I don't think so, but I can't recall another. Have we done multiple Scars cards? I don't fucking know.
I don't know. We don't know what we've done.
We're getting to the high number of episodes. We're not going to remember offhand anymore. But if it's not a Scars guard, yeah, this might be it.
But yeah, I didn't make the connection. I know I had seen Lewis Pullman's face. I didn't know that he was Bill Pullman's son until researching this movie. I learned some new stuff, and I didn't even connect him after watching this to Outer Range, which is one of my favorite new series out this year, where he's like, in a couple years, I feel like he's still recognizable as the same guy, but he's sort of filled in and matured between the age of, I don't know, like 25 and 28, where now he looks like a serious man. He plays this very sort of macho rodeo champion in Outer Range compared to this little twerpy meek clerk in this movie. It's quite a transformation.
Yeah, and you know what, like at the time this movie was made in 2017 or 2018, I could totally see him going up for a lot of the same roles as Tom Holland, who was up for I think he was offered the role of Miles and turned it down. And you could totally see Tom Holland in this role.
Totally.
But yeah, if you look at him now in Outer Range, or I think most people are going to recognize him recently from Top Gun Maverick, but bear in mind, Top Gun Maverick was made years ago and just released recently. Yeah. So yeah, if you see him now, he really does, like him and Tom Holland are probably not going out for the same roles anymore.
Yeah, no, he's moved into a different type, but great in both.
Yeah, no, he's super effective in this movie, I think. He got a little grating towards the end, and we can get into why, but then when you come done, like, he just really wants to confess some stuff, man. And read the room sometimes, Miles. Like, maybe now is not the best time.
He won't drop it, but he's scared shitless of his eternal salvation being at risk.
And rightfully so. Some of the things he's seen. He just wants to tell somebody, I've seen some shit, man. I've done some shit. Everyone's like, okay, Miles, we get it. So, no, you don't understand. I've seen some shit.
So speaking of characters getting annoying, Jon Hamm's character can grate on you in this first scene. He takes over the room, and that's kind of on purpose because it doesn't take long before we reveal that that's just an act. But it's a little intense.
Kind of playing a Southern chauvinist, racist. He's not a good guy, but he's certainly the center of attention. Kind of like if Don Draper was from the Deep South, you might have gotten someone like this, but he's very good at playing like a douchebag. But then, of course, it's almost disappointing when he's revealed to be an undercover FBI agent because you're like, man, I've seen Jon Hamm do that, play like the straight-laced FBI guy enough at this point. Kind of want to see him spread his wings a little bit more.
It's interesting. On repeat watches, I feel like there's nuance to it because, on one hand, you can think that the movie is setting you up for a straight flip from a kind of unpleasant guy to a straight-laced hero. But then you think about it for a second, you're like, wait a minute, this is an FBI agent who's working directly for J. Edgar Hoover on a project.
Himself, not the most scrupulous gentleman.
Exactly. And the project project that he's working on is bugging a casino hotel room, which is basically to just do the same thing that the creepy owners of the hotel are doing, which is gather compromising dirt on famous people and use it against them. So he flips from, oh, you think he's a bad guy into a good guy, but he's still a bad guy, even though he's sort of righteous, and he takes what he thinks is righteous action after that.
He intervenes in a situation he was explicitly told not to, which shows he's got a little bit of a moral compass that's probably been compromised over the years, but it's still there. It's eroded, but it's not all the way gone. What do you think about Russell Crowe in this role? I think maybe when we're playing the Southern Gentleman portion of the Jon Hamm role, he would have been too threatening to feel like, because he still seems convivial, and maybe he's just like the high school football star that never really grew out of that mindset. He's like, Hamm's a bit of a bully, but Crowe doing that kind of stuff, I feel like has a whole much more sinister tone.
He could have gone sinister, but we've also seen Crowe be really cheeky and self-aware in stuff like The Nice Guys, where he could have done a really funny version of that vacuum cleaner salesman. I don't know.
I would have liked to see it. I don't know that he's better suited to the straight man FBI role is obviously what Jon Hamm is best known for at this point. He's always playing law enforcement in movies now. I don't know how Crowe would have balanced that, because he's played cops and law enforcement types before, but much more freewheeling. And I always think of Bud White. He's not like the guy you'd send in there undercover. He's an agent of chaos, essentially.
Yes, if he played Bud White in this, that would be an interesting clash.
Of course, Bud White was 13 years before this movie or whatever it was.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we want to talk about? Let's talk about Dakota Johnson, because she arrives and gives the movie a shot. Everyone's going through the pleasantries and being as polite as they can, but Emily, the Dakota Johnson character, walks in and just does not give a shit, which I loved. And I loved when Miles started giving her the spiel. Goes through this long speech about when at the El Royale, you have the option of staying in California or Nevada. Or on the dividing line, and like a history, and she just picks a room when he's one sentence into his pitch.
Yeah, that was funny.
Good comedy.
That was great. She was a fun addition to our little group. She's just an asshole when she comes in. And so you immediately think poorly of her. Jon Hamm, while he was polite, although slightly offensive to both the priest and the R&B singer, he is straight out rude to the hippie, which is kind of a tip-off.
Like hippies.
No, that's like revealing his secret. Actually, he's a straight-laced Hoover acolyte FBI agent who just fucking hates hippies. So he's a real dick to her. But I mean, she's a dick to everybody. So it's mutual.
I was shocked he didn't call her a beatnik or something. Maybe he did, and I'm just not remembering it. But I like Dakota Johnson in this role. She's very good at playing kind of cooler than everybody else in the room. I feel like in the early parts of her, like she got most famous, obviously, for the 50 Shades movies, which are not my cup of tea. And I don't think she was what's wrong with them. I don't think either of the two main actors are what's wrong with those movies. I like them both quite a bit and other things. But yeah, she kind of hit her groove at playing like she's a little cooler than you. She's a little smarter than you. And that's what she's doing here. And it's working for me.
She has great energy for this part. It's really good casting.
I think she might be a little bit like that in real life too. If you watch interviews with her, like she doesn't suffer fools.
I see.
Which her character doesn't either. So that seems like she's just playing off her real personality a little bit there.
It works.
Now, I started feel like there's chapters to the movie. They're broken up into little, was it five or six chapters? Or
there's a bunch. Yeah, there's full-on title cards that come up for little sections that you can't really follow. They're in a pattern, but
chronologically, it's a bit of a mishmash. But it gave me some Hateful Eight vibes, especially if you watched it on Netflix when they broke it up into a miniseries. Think about the parallels, right? It's a bunch of strangers in a hotel. They're holed up there. They're stuck. They're stuck at the El Royale because, spoiler alert, Jon Hamm cuts all their brake lines or whatever. They're stuck in the Hateful Eight because of the weather. But then there's also like passing mentions to this impending force that's coming down on the hotel and is going to wreak havoc.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels. And the weather in this too, although literally Jon Hamm pulls the wires off their distributor caps. There's also a huge storm that descends on the hotel and kind of feels like that's what's trapping them in there together. And yeah, a lot of people made comparisons between just this and Tarantino movies in general because the twisty characters, the whole genre has a lot of commonalities, but I didn't feel Drew Goddard was just doing a dime store Tarantino. I felt like this was genuinely his own thing.
Oh yeah, I think it's mostly incidental. He clearly had this idea kicking around in his head for years before he wrote it down. This is a carefully considered movie and story. But the more the movie went on, the more I was like, oh yeah, this kind of feels like a bit of a sister movie to The Hateful Eight, which is another movie I like. I like a montage of people arriving to a place and kind of learning about them in like little bits and pieces,
It's a fun style of movie.
So then we get the reveal that Hamm is in the FBI. He's on the phone with his daughter. So you're immediately starting to soften your view on him a little bit because he's pretty sweet with his daughter.
He's kind of miffed because he hasn't talked to her in a bit and they changed the words of the prayer. They no longer say, if I should die before I wake, because that's too scary for the kids.
That's a bit bit of a fucking downer of a prayer. I did like his line, who taught her the word morbid?
Yeah.
When you're only hearing one side of a conversation, like a line like that does a lot of work. So then he finds all these listening devices in his room, but then he's also there to plant other ones of his own.
Yeah. As he's on this sweet call with his daughter, he's pulling little wires out of the phone and he just keeps pulling and pulling to the point where it becomes comedic, which is how many bugs he's pulled out of this room. And there's 2 full sets plus, which he then explains later in his call. Like, I found ours, I found another set and some other ones. Like, there was literally 25 listening devices in this one honeymoon suite.
All right. So then Hamm discovers the two-way mirror just because he's a little more trained at what to look at. I guess he can see through the mirror a little bit, right?
He starts to suspect, and then he goes outside and he paces off the room from the outside and from the inside. And he's like, I'm not seeing the whole room. That's when he goes back behind the front desk where Miles is unexpectedly nodded off again. What's his deal?
It's 1969. He's got a heroin needle in his arm. I'd watched American Gangster pretty recently, so I was like, oh, this dude just came back from Vietnam and he picked up a habit while he was there, was my conclusion.
Sharp eye.
But that's where a lot of heroin addicts in the U.S. came from. They got hooked over there and came home with it.
Yeah.
To feed the habit.
Convenient for Agent Hamm because he can just stroll right behind the desk, grab the master key, start picking locks, and finding his way into the secret tunnel.
Miles got some good shit for the clerk of a pretty much defunct hotel.
In the middle of nowhere, yeah.
He can afford the good stuff because he's zonked. My man is nodding. And Hamm can just do whatever he likes. No one's going to hear him in this state.
Yeah, this is where I got scared because he picks this lock. It's in this very dark, shadowy hallway, unfinished concrete, and the light shining in pools as it comes through each two-way mirror down the length of this tunnel. I was spooked, man. I was ready for some real horror shit to happen, but it's actually a really interesting scene. It's this long one-shot tracking shot all the way through, and Cynthia Erivo is rehearsing in her room. Hamm flips on that speaker, and that becomes the soundtrack for this whole scene. She's singing This Old Heart of Mine by the Isley Brothers for this whole several-minute scene. It's this beautifully choreographed bit of filmmaking.
Really impressive. I'm not sure if it truly is one long take. I know that there's a lot of ways to flub your way through that now.
Sure.
But I don't know how true this is. I read that this was live singing from her, which would be very impressive if that's true because she's hitting every note just right.
Yeah, sounds great.
And it's a nice device where we see her singing but can't hear her, and then he flips the switch and all of a sudden the sound is like exploding. Really cool sound design in this movie with the idea that you can turn on the listening device in these two-way mirrors on and off, and it's used to great effect a couple times. But this is real show-off shit from Goddard here. He's pulling out all his tricks for this shot, and it pays off. And this is a really fun scene.
It's a slow walk because he walks down the hallway. We see Father Flynn is tearing up his floorboards. We have an idea of why that is because we saw a guy tear up those floorboards in the opening montage. Jon Hamm's character doesn't know what the fuck's going on there. He keeps walking. He sees the girl singing. He keeps walking. He sees Emily down in her room is bringing a girl into her room. We didn't know there was a girl. All of a sudden, there's this young girl, and she's tying her up in a chair, and he's freaking out.
It's none other than Erin McMenemy from Mayor of Easttown, our old friend.
I didn't recognize her. I didn't make the connection till after. She was very dour in a different way in Mayor of Easttown, one of our favorite shows, but she's good in this too. She's
got some real creepy energy in this movie. Real creepster, real threatening.
We'll get into it at the end. She's obviously a victim, but she's also creepy on her own. So it's very interesting to ponder what the implications of this character's actions are. But here she's tied up because her sister had to forcibly yank her out of this cult that she was really into.
You get her backstory. She's clearly a victim of abuse from her father, and Emily clearly has been her protector her whole life. So we get a little bit of that background, and it sets up their dynamic pretty well without showing too much. The movie suffers whenever it cuts away from the hotel, I think, a little bit. So it's smart to keep it to a minimum, but there's some sections that drag on a little bit.
Yeah, they're mostly pretty tight. It makes sense that when you have a bottled up movie like this with all these characters in one place, and they all have crazy secrets, that doing flashbacks makes sense. It gets you out of seeing the exact same walls over and over again, gives you some fresh perspective visually in the movie. It also helps you tell those stories without the characters having to talk their way through all of them. And some of them are really nicely tight. Some of them drag on. So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Okay, Hamm sees all this. He gets back on the phone with J. Edgar Hoover because he just got him on speed dial. And then he drops the line, "Sir, we have a problem." And it fades to black. It felt like the end of a TV pilot.
There's a couple fades in this, which, as we talked about on a previous episode, whenever a movie fades to black, it definitely, for our generation at least, evokes television. But it works. If the movie, like we said, is episodic, it has these little vignettes that are framed with title cards and stuff. And I don't know, it's fun. There's something nice about a movie that strongly establishes its rhythm, and it's not just one endless thing dragging on.
Yeah, and it's a retro vibe to the movie, and that's clearly like a vestige of old-timey filmmaking. So it's evoking the right sense of nostalgia out of the viewer. It's just, like you said, it is always jarring because we're just not used to it. It's no longer in vogue, but it can be effective when used properly. Did you want me to walk through the middle section of the movie?
Yeah, let's hear what happens next.
All right. In the lounge, Father Flynn and Darlene chat over pie, and we learn that she's just striking out on her own after leaving her girl group to escape an abusive music impresario. We also find out that Emily's hostage is her little sister Rose, who Emily just liberated from the clutches of a hippie murder cult. But the FBI agent doesn't know this when he busts into the room and ends up getting shot dead by Emily. Darlene sees it all from the parking lot. Emily's shotgun blast also breaks the mirror and injures Miles, who is watching from the other side. Miles had just confessed his secrets to Father Flynn, including the existence of a film reel on which one of the most famous men in the world is caught in a sex act. JFK. Amidst the chaos, Rose picks up the phone and calls the cult leader Billy Lee, and she asks him to come and get her. So this section of the movie, we get a little more background on Darlene as well. She was singing in a girl group with the sleaziest music producer of all time.
A really weird character. The scene, you recognize it. It's based on real life stuff. Darlene Sweet is based loosely on real life background singer Darlene Love, who had her own travails with scary music producer Phil Spector.
Yeah, Phil Spector, not a good guy. Let's just get that out of the way. I don't want to say anything too controversial, but not the most wholesome character. And this music producer is no better. We don't know that he shot anyone, but he's pretty bad.
He's clearly a jerk. He pulls Darlene aside and makes this whole point about how much his time costs.
$200 an hour.
$200 an hour, which is crazy for 1969.
I did the math. It would be like $1,700 an hour today.
That's a lot. Maybe he's the best music producer in the world, but he's clearly an asshole because he's wasting a whole bunch of time very slowly dragging out, asking her, do you know how much my time costs? So he's being an ass. But then, help me out with this, the movie might be saying that his point was valid because she gets herself out of that toxic situation, which good for her. But she's convinced that what she needs to do is go hole up in this hotel, put on a metronome, and just fucking woodshed her song so that she actually never fucks up again. So was he right? Did she need to practice more?
Yeah, it's one of those unanswerable questions. We don't know how much of his advice is legitimate. Either way, even if it was good advice, he did not deliver it in the most gentle way.
No, so fuck that guy. I'm glad she's gotten away from him and into a nice hotel where nothing bad could happen to her.
He comes across a little predatory too. The movie's not explicit about it, but you get the vibe that if he thought he could get away with it, he might do more than just give her tough advice.
Yeah, I couldn't make out even everything he said, and I also wasn't interested in hearing him because you could tell he was just a pure asshole from the first thing out of his mouth. But that's the story that Darlene tells to Father Flynn, who they seem to be vibing, right? Like they're forming a little friendship. They both reveal some things about themselves and they're connecting.
Yeah, but he's a little pushy about getting her a drink. Yeah. He likes a cocktail in the evenings, we've learned, but he asks her one too many times, I'm going to get myself a drink. Let me get you one. I hate drinking alone. Blah. Like all the textbook lines you would say if you're about to try to roofie somebody.
And it turns out he was. Yeah.
It turns out he was. But Darlene is one step ahead of him. We get a nice shot of her just sneaking up on him and smacking him in the side of the head with a bottle, a champagne bottle, I believe.
Something big and green and heavy, and it wipes him out. That was a real fun surprise because the scene does play as if the two of them are connecting, even though she must be suspecting him early because that bottle sneaks up on you so hard, which it has to for the surprise of the scene.
She took her heels off. What a great detail.
Yeah, you see that on the replay. You get a second angle the second time that scene plays through from her point of view, and she leaves her heels over by the jukebox and she sprints over to catch him with that bottle while his back is turned. But like he's just then pouring the drugs into her drink. That wasn't the moment she realized. That was the moment that she was certain that it was time to strike.
I think she's probably seen some shit and been through some shit. And when a man is that pushy about giving you a drink, she just immediately got the hair on the back of her neck standing up.
I think you're totally right. And she says something almost to that extent later in the film, but she explains it to him later when they make up, which is because funny enough, smashing him overhead with a bottle wasn't the end of their relationship. They end up becoming buds again later in the movie.
It's a temporary obstacle for the two of them and their eternal friendship, but it's a fun one because it immediately throws you for a loop. You don't really see that coming.
No, it's just super fun.
And then we get the Jon Hamm getting shot scene, which is another thing you don't really expect because up until this point, he's set up as ostensibly the hero of the movie.
Yeah.
You get protagonist vibes from him for sure. And the movie doesn't have any fat in its cast. So if anyone's going to die, it's going to be someone that you're familiar with and attached to by now. And this is when people start getting offed.
That's a big one to lose Jon Hamm, the big studly FBI agent. You thought he could save the day, and he's the first one to go down.
First one to go down, underestimating Emily, clearly.
You hope that they can work it out because you go, oh, wait, he's intervening because he really thinks that the girl is in jeopardy and she's doing it to protect the girl. And if she could only explain to him, but no, she's been through too much shit. She is not explaining shit to any man who's busting in and threatening her, she's pulling the trigger. And what I noticed on my second rewatch, she lets him have it with both barrels, which is like an expression you don't think is something that people actually do. But she's got this short double barrel shotgun. She shoots him, and then you see her break the shotgun open and pull both empty shells out of it.
But can you blame her? Up until that point, she just knows him as like the redneck asshole who is, she doesn't really grasp his situation. I did get a laugh when he goes up to Rose and is, don't worry, I'm going to get you out of this. And she's just very blank. She's like, okay, good. She's very deadpan. And that's not a bad performance. That's a choice. And her playing it very detached, a little vacant. She's been brainwashed.
Yeah, she doesn't want to go with her sister. She doesn't want to really go with the FBI. She's just buying her time till she can get back to Billy Lee.
Billy Lee. Should we talk about Billy Lee?
Before we get into Billy Lee, the Hamm death of the universe is inevitable at some point, but the Hamm death of this movie happens 3 times. This is one of the interesting filmmaking flourishes of this movie is this scene gets 3 perspectives because like we said, she blows John Hamm away. He's standing in front of the mirror blows out too, and then we hear this croaking, groaning from the other side because Miles was standing there watching this all unfold and he got caught on one side of the face full of buckshot. And so this is the second time we see the scene. We see it from his and Father Flynn's perspective as he's taking Father Flynn back through the sneaky back rooms. And then we actually see it a third time when Darlene is out in the rainy parking lot and she sees the same thing through the door.
She's trying to make a run for it, find out her car doesn't work. Yeah, Miles gets fucked up. I thought he was dead.
Yeah.
Turns out he's just grievously injured. It was a nice moment when he asks Emily how he looks. And she says, you're going to have to make peace that some things have changed.
That was a cute line. There was also a little parallel that I caught just before that. So Darlene clocks Father Flynn with the champagne bottle. Miles finds Father Flynn on the floor, picks him up and goes, hey, you got glass in your head. And then it's only 5 minutes later that Emily has Miles tied up after shooting him through the mirror with the shotgun. And she says to him, hey, you got glass in your head.
Yeah. Reoccurring lines is a motif I'm a fan of. It was a big part of The Wire. I like it when it's deployed cleverly like this.
One was subtle,
to draw some interesting parallels.
Yeah, it was fun.
Now we get to Billy Lee, played by Chris Hemsworth. He's a Manson-esque figure, although he seems more interested in getting laid than Manson did. He's a little bit more of a hound dog, if you will.
Yeah.
He seems to prey on young women specifically. Not that Manson didn't. I don't know a lot about Charles Manson, to be perfectly honest. Was there a sexual angle to his cult?
I don't know. The less I know about him, the better for me. But yeah, Billy Lee is a Lothario who wants to use his cult status to just sleep with all the women he wants, including underage girls, like we assume that Rose is. So he's pretty.
She's certainly styled to be like, very young.
Yeah.
If not underage, right on the border, which is creepy because Chris Hemsworth is much older than that. But his first introduction to him when he meets Rose on the beach, I thought that's a good introduction for this character. It's effective. It's not too long. You get his vibe. You understand why people are drawn to him. He's obviously very handsome because he's Chris Hemsworth. He's got kind of a sing-songy way of talking. He's clever, quick on his feet, charismatic. His accent's maybe hit or miss.
That's true. But his look, besides being handsome and ripped, is kind of magical in this, right? He walks up to her on this beach and the sun is behind his head and he's only seen in silhouette in this whole first scene, which gives him this mystical air, which is great. You get a sense of Rose's perspective that this magical man appeared to save her and she's under his spell right away.
Yeah. He calls her Boots, which is a little charming nickname because she's wearing boots on the beach.
She's wearing her dad's boots, which is a little clue to what happened in the backstory there. We get these other flashbacks where we see that Emily has protected her little sister Rose from her dad's abuse throughout their childhood, but the dad is dead, and that's how they got out from under this abuse. But unfortunately, the scars that he left theoretically caused Rose to fall under the sway of this other powerful and evil man. But what I realize is both for Rose and for Miles, the Vietnam War is part of the source of their pain because she's sitting on the beach wearing her dad's boots and all her belongings are in a U.S. Army duffel bag with her dad's name on it. So it's like, okay, he went to war, he was killed in Vietnam, and all she has is his boots and tortured memories.
And the movie's subtle with it. It doesn't beat you over the head with it. Like, you could take it all on the surface and, it's not like you'll lose anything.
Right.
But yeah, those little details do enrich the experience if you pick up on them.
I didn't figure all that out until the second watch when I was really paying attention.
And yeah, the Vietnam War looms large is a note I had in my, when I was watching it. I didn't actually expand upon that. It is like a specter. There's a few cuts to Nixon on the TV giving a speech about Vietnam and the ceasefire.
He's talking about the concept of it.
It doesn't work because it's a guerrilla war. You can't really call a ceasefire in a guerrilla war. But yeah, Vietnam is clearly like a specter that hangs over this movie.
Yeah.
And so is JFK, because I think diligent watchers will be able to surmise that's probably JFK on that film reel they're talking about throughout this movie.
Yeah.
Which then begs the question of who's Miles' boss? Is it the mob? Because they were at odds with the Kennedys a lot in this time period.
I think it is the mob. I think that's the unspoken been part of it, which is interesting. They really didn't go much into the real history. You could go into this movie and think this El Royale Hotel on the California-Nevada border is just a fanciful construct of Drew Goddard, but it's really heavily based on real life. There's a hotel that kind of looks like this. And
on the Nevada and California border,
It's got the same whole shtick with the borderline running through the middle of it. It was bought by Frank Sinatra, literally frequented by the Rat Pack, as the fictional hotel supposedly had been.
The Cal Neva Hotel, not quite as creatively named as the El Royale.
Hard to say, but look that up, or maybe we should just put the Wikipedia link in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll
just
drop
reading that story. It's full of so much rich stuff. You're like, wow, they could have gone deep on the mob side, because just like the fictional hotel, it lost its gaming license because Sinatra was hanging around with known mobsters. There's some very strong real life parallels, but they're just hinted at in the movie, which is fun because it's a light touch and it doesn't bog you down with that stuff.
You could watch this movie with tunnel vision on just the main storyline, these people that you're attached to getting out of the hotel alive, but there's all these cool little details on the periphery that will enrich the viewing if you choose to dive into it, which I think is like a really smart play. Let people watch it on their own terms and decide how in depth they want to get with it.
Yeah,
and it works
totally.
both ways.
I have nothing but like good things to say about the filmmaking here.
You alluded to the wolf story in the intro here.
Yes.
What did you make of that story? It's the only real story that Miles gets to luxuriate in when he's telling Father Flynn about all the terrible stuff he's seen. Or actually, he's telling Emily about it at that point.
Yeah,
right?
and this
he tells Emily the wolf story.
After she shoots him, she ties him up because she's like, what kind of pervert hotel is this? What are you doing? And
I like the repeated line of, what is this, some kind of pervert hotel? That's another one that comes up a few times.
Everybody's asking everybody else, what is this, a pervert hotel? And everyone's like, I guess so. Yeah.
Kind of.
That's what it is. And yeah, he keeps hinting that he's seen such awful stuff. He's repeatedly trying to tell Father Flynn the worst stuff he's seen. He's like, oh, this isn't even the worst stuff. Let me tell you the worst stuff. Finally, he gets to tell Emily some of the worst stories. And his main story that he really leans into is one time a guy brought a full-grown feral wolf on a choke chain into the room, and he stripped down naked and lied down in bed with it and spent the night there. And it wasn't sexual, but it wasn't not sexual. And it got to the point where I took that as comic relief.
Oh, I did not.
Okay. You were freaked out by that?
I mean, at first I pictured the Little Red Riding Hood wolf, like with the nightgown and the cap and like the little candle on a plate. But no, when I pictured it, it was kind of harrowing. I don't know. There's something that the movie is trying to say there that I can't quite grasp. Like, I'm setting the upper limits of my metaphorical intelligence, trying to grasp what the movie is trying to tell me with this anecdote.
It's a weird story. To me, it was a step down on the horrific scale from this previous story, which is I watched a junkie write, I'm sorry, in his own feces on the wall before he died, and I had to clean him up. Like, that's horrifying in just the most awful way. This is a guy spent the night with a wolf and he didn't have sex with it. He just lied naked holding onto it the whole night. I was like, okay, this is just ridiculous and funny. I didn't worry too much about, is it a metaphor for something?
My first thought was that the man is Billy Lee and the wolf is Rose. And that's what we're supposed to draw from that, because she's feral, because she's been abused her whole life. And this man is controlling this wild animal somehow and getting it to acquiesce to his requests. But we know she's dangerous. I got that far, but then I was like, but now what?
That kind of works. The only thing for me is that the anecdote doesn't end with a strong twist.
Right.
It's kind of like he just spent the night and then he checked out of the hotel and paid his bill. Like,
yeah, it doesn't tell you anything about their relationship in the end that we don't already know.
I'm interested to speculate on Rose the wolf, and is she more dangerous than she seems to Billy Lee and to everyone? But we should do that once we get to the third act reveal.
All right, we're moving along. You want to hit us with the end?
All right, here comes the big finale. So Father Flynn confesses to Darlene that he's actually a bank robber named Doc, come to collect the hidden loot from a heist a decade ago. They agree to team up on a plan to dig up the cash without attracting notice by Emily. But before they can get away, Billy Lee and several of his cult underlings appear and tie everyone up in the hotel lobby. Billy Lee conducts a cruel interrogation and kills Emily with the tacit approval of her brainwashed sister Rose. Then a fight breaks out in which the hotel catches fire. Miles saves the day, revealing that he was a sniper in Vietnam and shooting all the bad guys with lethal accuracy until Rose mortally wounds him, stabbing him with a knife in the gut. Playing the role of priest for the last time, Doc absolves Miles of his sins before Miles dies. Then Doc and Darlene scoop up the money, burn the reel of film, and leave the hotel to go up in flames as they start new lives.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, this section opens with the flashback to Doc's botched bank robbery, right?
Yeah.
I guess the bank robbery wasn't exactly botched, or the armored truck robbery wasn't botched. It was the escape that was botched. They hung around a little too long, and Doc had to lead the cops away, which is why his brother, played by Nick Offerman, buried the money under the floor floorboards for them to retrieve later.
Exactly. Very well explained for something that was complicated.
But Nick Offerman, like you said, the one shot we get of him in the opening, he's at quite a distance, so we can't even really tell it's him. And then we get him with a mask on. One of my favorite actors. Don't hide this man from me. Feels like a victim of the edit here a little bit. Maybe he had more backstory that they just couldn't fit in.
Or just a bold choice to be like, fuck it, this man is an actor.
A flex.
Yeah, you can see his eyes. And there's just a couple scenes and this very bare explanation that he and Doc are brothers, and the third guy that they brought in to help them with this heist fucked it all up for them. But in those short little exchanges, both of them wearing these big corny plastic masks over the top half of their faces, it's somehow still touching. There's some nice brotherly connection established between Offerman and Bridges in this short little scene.
Yeah, there's like a warmth between them that you can surmise. You believe them as brothers too. You know, Nick Offerman and Jeff Bridges, they seem like
totally. They do a lot with a little. And like you talk about not getting everything you would want from Nick Offerman, what you do get is him doing fucking carpentry work. The first scene, that's literally like Nick Offerman fucking works with wood. It's just him prying up floorboards and nailing them back down, and that's enjoyable.
They did not need a stuntman for that scene. He was that's why they hired him. They're like, oh, he built us a kayak in the middle of all this. Look at this shit. You were just supposed to pull up the floorboards, Nick. I do have his book called Paddle Your Own Canoe, which is very, very good. My wife got it for me because I'm a big fan of his. But this is presented to us as a flashback, and then we cut back to Doc and Darlene in the car, and they have their little showdown, which is quite pleasant. They're both really fun to be around, and watching them interact with each other. They're both just throwing 100 miles an hour. Cynthia Erivo and Jeff Bridges in the scene. And the reveal that his Alzheimer's or dementia was not exaggerated previously, he just literally got the room wrong, was a nice bit of explanation. And then we get the great scene where Darlene agrees to help him get the money, and she has to basically sing loud enough to drown out the sounds of him prying up the floorboards in case somebody's listening. And good thing they took those steps because Emily was watching for most of it.
In a convenient cinematic twist, she happens to go down the hallway just at the right time to catch Darlene singing, and cleverly with the timing of their claps, each time he needs to actually drive the pry bar in between the boards or hammer with something, she covers it with a clap. It's all timed out to the music. It's another really cool musical scene and a very clever one.
Again, very considered filmmaking. No wasted scenes, no wasted shots. This is high-level stuff here. But then we get to probably the weakest section of the movie, and I think we agree on this, is the flashback to Billy Lee's compound in California. This is a problem I have in movies with cult figures, is that once they're no longer on the margins and you have to reveal who they really are, cult figures appeal to a certain type of person. And if you're not that type of person, you just find them tedious.
I guess it was too hard to keep that mystical air that he had in the first scene. When he's in silhouette, he's all promise and mystery and expectation. And then you turn the lights up on him and he's just a guy rattling off a lecture.
Just a guy.
Not to say he's bad. Like we said, Hemsworth is good in the role. The scene is not that bad. It takes a long time to make this point that he has this sway over these young girls and he makes them fight each other to go to bed with him, which is twisted and gross and helps set the stage for how far gone all these characters are. But it takes a while. You're like, oh, I think I knew that was the deal. And then maybe you didn't need to show me.
Right. Like his dominion over these young girls is evident just in the way Rose is broken by him and calls him, even though clearly it's not what's best for her.
Right.
The movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It's not a short movie. And if there was anything to cut, I think you could have shortened this section. And I don't know if Goddard is doing it on purpose, that the more we see of Billy, the less mystical and the less powerful he seems to us, because it does seem like that could be a statement he's trying to make.
That's a good point, because his culmination of his plot line, he is thoroughly deflated. And that's the big victory for the Darlene character, is that she gives the speech when he's got them all tied up and she just totally shreds him and he fucking loses. Like Darlene,
he kind of pouts.
Darlene wins. She has this moment of triumph and she calls him a fragile little man and he tries to come back to her and she's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't care. I'd rather sit and listen to the rain. And he is fucking defeated, man. She beats him. And so like you're saying, that's the culmination of him losing his mystery.
That was a speech actually that Cynthia Erivo asked for. It was not in the script originally, but she said, give this character some agency, let her have a victory in this moment would be important. And I think she's right. That really does work for her character to kind of...
It's great.
But we also get some hints that maybe Rose is not the fragile young girl we've been led to believe so much. She might have killed some people.
So there's the specter of the Vietnam War on the TV. The other thing that keeps coming up on the TV is these mysterious murders in Malibu that happened the morning before. And it turns out that was Rose. And so you're like, oh, it really is a Manson cult. He's ordering her to go murder these.
It does not seem like he ordered her to do that, though. He seems none too pleased with it.
Yeah, that's the last twist of it. I'm like, I only picked that up on my last watch. I'm like, wait a minute. he's being real when he says, oh yeah, that happened. We're going to have to talk about that when we get back. Like the murders were her idea. It wasn't Manson sending her off under his sway. It was like, oh yeah, Rose is a fucking nutball who wants to stab our neighbors, and I got to maybe rein her back in.
Yeah, you get the vibe that she's a little out there. You know, she's like swinging from the chandeliers.
That's true. She literally swings from the chandelier.
And there's a lot of really serious stuff happening that just does not seem to register with her at all. She kind of floats above it. So you're like, there's something going on here. I did not expect that, though. And when I finally pieced that together, I was like, oh shit, this little girl is something to be wary of. But, and the other hand of that is, can you blame her? She's clearly been through horrific abuse and violence throughout her life. Emily seems to have come out of it relatively okay, hardened by the world, surely. But Rose was younger. It could have had more of a lasting impact on her.
Emily's got the itchy trigger finger, but Rose is really a ruined person. And as much as this movie has a happy ending for the people that we end up loving the most, it has a truly tragic ending for Emily and her sister. Like her sister is so far gone that she's just fine with the idea that Billy Lee kills her in front of her. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, the Summer Springs do not get a lot to celebrate in this final act. And then the only thing that really snaps Rose out of her kind of trance-like state is when Billy Lee gets shot by Miles. And then you see the kind of feral rage come out of her, almost like a wolf, one might say.
Ooh, connecting the dots.
Here we go. So there was this scene with Shea Wiggum earlier in the movie. He's a hospital doctor. Also had a small but important role in season 6 of Justified, and that's our Justified crossover of the week.
Justified crossover of the week.
Wow, it happened again.
I can do it every movie, man. Don't fucking test me. I might have to go for like a stuntman one week, but you know, I'll get there. So Shea Wiggum is the prison doctor, and we get enough hints in this scene between him and Doc that Doc is a bit of a rowdy prisoner. He's getting in a lot of fights, and he's winning a lot of fights, and I feel like that's a really important scene. We also find out that Doc's Alzheimer is a real thing and not something he made up to seem more helpless. That's an important scene because then half an hour later, we get Jeff Bridges while tied to a chair beating the shit out of, I don't know, a 31-year-old Chris Hemsworth, who's free and has all his appendages. So you're like, they didn't set up that this guy's kind of formidable. This could be a ridiculous scene. And it's still a little ridiculous, even with that.
He is a wild brawler. They don't make him a skilled kung fu fighter. Like
he's not John Wick, yeah.
Yeah, he's basically like bum rushing him and tackling him into one thing after another and beating him while he's down. But he's ferocious. And I didn't even pick up on the fact that, yeah, they totally foreshadowed that with the prison doctor telling him, you got to stop getting in these fights. You nearly killed this kid. And like, that's his pattern.
Yeah. But then Billy does eventually get the upper hand on Doc. But I was just watching it like, I wonder if Chris Hemsworth's like, I took a pay cut so Jeff Bridges could beat my ass while he's tied to a chair. This is embarrassing.
For a young actor. I think he was probably thrilled.
Oh, I'd pay to have Jeff Bridges beat my ass while he's tied to a chair. Believe me.
He's still beating people's asses. This is another 4 years later, and he's back on TV beating killing young dudes left and right.
Well, the old man wasn't filmed that long after Bad Times. It's a COVID production. But honestly, in the old man, it's really impressive because there are some long fight scenes where it's clearly Jeff Bridges and not a stunt double.
Oh, yeah. There's some really good, very visceral fighting in the old man. If you watch this movie and you didn't get enough of Jeff Bridges beating younger men up, turn on the old man.
Yeah, the old man fucking rules. I'm not so sure how I feel about a second season. It just got renewed.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know about that. It feels like this should be a one and done thing.
The even older man.
It almost killed poor Jeff Bridges making it.
Oh, Jesus, really?
Yeah, I'll get into it. I'm going to do the rundown of what everyone's been up to since this movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges straight up almost died. The Miles Sniper reveal is good. I saw it coming because, I'm a student of film and history, and I knew he's probably in Vietnam, whatever. It's not a big deal. I was just really smart about it.
You're very smart about that. I was very dumb about it because I had also seen the movie before, and I had no idea that was coming, which is cool. Like you said, if you wait long enough in between viewings of this movie, you'll forget little details like that. And you're like, oh shit, he's got superhero skills all of a sudden. And it was satisfying because a lot of people complain about this last part of the movie being a little tedious. It's a little bit of a traditional bad guy confrontation that we've seen before. He's got the good guys tied up. He's torturing them.
It's a bit James Bond villain, yeah.
Yeah, you've got your heroes in this position of ultimate futility, and that creates tension, but it's a very exhausting kind of tension. And so this was a great way to disperse that tension and give everybody the feel-good moment of, okay, the little kid who's just been suffering the whole time is going to wipe out this whole clan of cult crazies in about 5 seconds of sharpshooting.
And it was a nice touch that he only really picked up the gun and was steadfast about killing these guys once Darlene told him he didn't have to. He had some agency in this moment.
Yeah.
She understood that he'd been traumatized and it was a bridge too far for him to pick up a gun and start killing people again. So when she lets him off the hook, I feel like he develops genuine affection for these people and wants to protect them now, which was a nice arc for his character.
Yeah, it was more than just push comes to shove. There was an emotional opportunity there there for him to turn a corner and then become the hero again.
And then the true ending of the movie is Darlene and Doc get out of there. They decide to burn the film, even though it's worth more than all the money they've taken out of the floor. I guess it just didn't feel right to them. Next thing we see is Doc going to see Darlene at her show in Reno.
Yeah,
right? Is that what she was singing that night? Was it Reno?
Yeah, she was booked in Reno. You don't know if it's literally the next night.
It's probably not the next night. That wouldn't be as satisfying.
But they do repeat the line, I guess because the scene between Darlene and Doc is shown from two different perspectives, where she says, if you're free tomorrow night, I'm going on in Reno tomorrow night at 6. And then the movie ends with him coming into her Reno show, which could be the next night at 6. Their new lives start pretty fast.
I like to think it's like a year or two down the line and Doc's got his Alzheimer's under control. Because doctors in 1969 had a really good handle on Alzheimer's and dementia, right? He's probably fine.
Yeah, they give you a couple aspirin, walk it off.
Sadly, they don't have much better of a handle on it now.
No, yeah, that's probably why. You know what? Now that you say that, I bet it is the next night. Or at least it's very close, because there's another point where the actual prison doctor says, when you due for parole? And he says 6 months. He's like, well, I think you can make it to that. So he's close to being a goner by the time he even shows up at this hotel.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've just figured that out. It's a happy ending in one sense, but also like it's not really a happy ending for Doc. At this point, he's probably got a month or two left before he just completely loses it.
But he found somebody good to do right by. He immediately was drawn to Darlene, and that wasn't fake. He was truly mesmerized by her music, and that's reflected in the way he talks about her through the rest of the film.
I do think he was genuinely moved by her singing, unlike Billy Lee, who says, I've heard better. But you know, he didn't actually, he hadn't actually heard better. He was just trying to be petty at that moment because he got dressed down.
Yeah, it was a little delayed comeback, George Costanza style. He's like the jerk store called.
Right. All right, so that was Bad Times at the El Royale, a movie we both very much enjoyed. Yeah. Did you want to kind of see what some of these people have been up to?
Yeah, it hasn't been long. What have they been doing since then?
All right, so we mentioned Drew Goddard was the writer-director. If you want some more background on him, you can go back and listen to our Cabin in the Woods episode.
Sure.
It's in the 30s somewhere.
Episode 37.
Also hear more about Chris Hemsworth, because that was one of his first big movie roles. Drew Goddard, he has not done anything since this movie came out. He had done a lot before it. In addition to the movies I mentioned, he also was an uncredited writer on Deadpool 2. He was a creator of the Daredevil show on Netflix, which I was a big fan of. But he's got some stuff cooking. He is apparently writing the Project Hail Mary movie, which is going to be directed by Lord and Miller of Solo fame, another pod you can go back and listen to. We mentioned that movie on there. I think Gosling is supposed to star in it.
Cool.
It is a very popular sci-fi novel that I have not read, but I want to.
Yeah, me either.
He's writing a movie based on Robopocalypse.
Another popular sci-fi novel, right?
Yeah, and he's apparently going to be writing a Sinister Six movie. I don't know if that's still happening based on the reception to Morbius.
Oh, no. Morbius sunk one of his projects.
Your fucking favorite movie is keeping good filmmakers down.
I can't believe anything bad could happen as a result of Morbius.
I know. We'll see what happens with that. I wouldn't be devastated if he has other stuff on his plate besides the Sinister Six movie, which I'm a fan of his, I would watch, but begrudgingly. He's also working on an untitled Nate Bargatze project. I don't know if you're familiar with Nate Bargatze. He's a stand-up comedian who's quite funny and wholesome. It's like, just like family comedy.
And not a movie star type, so it'd be interesting to see what his movie project might be.
There have been auteurs who have directed stand-up specials in the past. It is a thing, like concert movies and such. It could be that direction, or there could be something completely different. We don't know much about it yet, but I'm excited because there's two creators I'm a big fan of right there working together. That's always fun.
I like that genre, and it actually makes me think of the case where a stand-up, Bo Burnham, became a film auteur, and then he continued to direct other people's stand-up specials.
Yeah, he did the Gerard Carmichael's last two specials.
Yeah, the last two, both which were really interesting from both the comedy and the direction.
Big fan of Gerard Carmichael. Check those out if you haven't seen them. This is the last movie Jeff Bridges starred in. He narrated a documentary in 2018, but that doesn't really count. And so The Old Man is the only thing he's done since 2018. He got a bad case of COVID and he had cancer. He got cancer while making The Old Man.
Oh, shit.
And legit almost died, but he seems to be fine now. It makes sense why he hasn't done a lot since then. He's probably been recovering, but The Old Man is coming back for a second season. Presumably he'll be on it. We don't know if he survives this season, but you'd have to imagine they're not going to make it without him.
The Old Man 2, The Young Man. It's a different guy. It's just like another guy.
Is it a prequel? No, it's just a different young man. Although they do have a guy playing younger Jeff Bridges in the show who's pretty good.
He's pretty good. He was a little bit too David Beckham for me. It took me a long time to figure out that he was young Jeff Bridges because he was clearly current David Beckham in my mind. But that's an inside thing for anyone who's seen The Old Man.
The young Lithgow is trying really hard to sound like John Lithgow, but I find that distracting more than anything.
I found it helpful because I'm like, okay, thank you. I at least figured out who that was instead of me being a confused idiot.
It's such a distinctive voice. I can't watch anyone else do it. It feels like feels like an impression rather than a younger version of the character. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Also, much like David Duchovny, Jeff Bridges, acclaimed singer-songwriter, has 3 albums out as well. So check those out if you want.
Yeah, just don't check out the song he wrote for R.I.P.D. because it sucks.
Yeah, please don't.
Sorry, Jeff.
People in the eye sockets. Although I did like the music in Crazy Heart, which I don't know if he wrote it all, but he definitely collaborated on it.
Yeah, okay.
Cynthia Erivo's been busy. She was nominated for Best Actress at the 2019 Oscars for Harriet, the movie where she played Harriet Tubman. She was also in future episode Chaos Walking with Tom Holland, who was almost in this movie with her. The movie came out in 2021, but was filmed in 2017, so it actually predated this movie. That will be covered on Blast Zone eventually because it lost a fucking boatload of money. The hilariously titled Needle in a Time Stack in 2021 with our old favorite, Drew Baylor, aka Orlando Bloom, in a villainous role. I did not watch that, but now I want to because it sounds trashy and fun.
It does. Sounds really trashy.
She was Holly on HBO's The Outsider. Did you watch The Outsider?
I did. I liked it, and I loved her as Holly Gibney. Really interesting, weird, recurring Stephen King character that I thought she really pulled off.
Yeah, there's a good Holly Gibney as well in the show Mr. Mercedes, which has some overlap with The Outsider in characters. But The Outsider, I thought, started really strong and didn't necessarily stick the landing, but that's how I felt about the book also. So that might just be the way the plot progresses. She also played Aretha Franklin on a Nat Geo show called Genius. I didn't know Nat Geo was doing scripted television.
Yeah, I didn't either. If I'm not mistaken, Cynthia Erivo is 3/4 of the way towards an EGOT.
Oh, what is she missing?
She's missing the Oscar.
That's probably the easiest one for her to get at this point.
Yeah, she's been nominated.
She's 35. She's British.
Yeah. No, when you hear her, you're like, holy shit. Yeah, she's playing all these iconic American characters. And then boom.
I'm more and more impressed by her by the minute. She's 35. She's got plenty of time to get that Oscar. I have faith that she's going to do it. We will pop some champagne on Blast Zone when she gets it because we're big Cynthia Erivo fans here.
She's awesome.
Dakota Johnson, we talked about Cha-Cha Real Smooth already. She's been in some good stuff. She's in The Lost Daughter, the Olivia Colman movie that was very critically acclaimed. I have not seen yet. She was in The Peanut Butter Falcon, which I liked quite a bit despite all the unpleasant Shia LaBeoufness of it.
Yes.
And a movie called Wounds, which I have not seen.
Okay.
She's got a movie that will be out by the time this episode is out called Persuasion, dropping on Netflix, I believe.
Wow, the timing of our show is impeccable.
Yeah, we timed it so great with Thor Love and Thunder, which now nobody cares about because it's been out for 2 weeks. But no, we wanted to match it up with the Dakota Johnson straight-to-streaming movie Persuasion. That's what we were going for.
We knew everybody would be on the edge of their seat.
Jon Hamm, of course, if you need a cop or a military type, you call Jon Hamm. Yeah. He's done this, Richard Jewell, No Sudden Move, Top Gun Maverick. He's basically got a little cottage industry of we need a good actor who can reliably play an authority figure. Let's get Jon Hamm in here. But he's going to be Fletch. I don't know how you feel about this.
I did not know that until you just said that.
Yeah, he's Fletch in the upcoming Confess Fletch. That's a Roger-ass name.
I see why. He is a guy who can put on those comedy characters the way Fletch adopted. Kind of good, but terrible at the same time. I could see him succeeding at Fletch.
Yeah, he's very good at like real goofy comedy. And I'm always a little disappointed that we don't get more of him in those roles. Because like on Kimmy Schmidt, he was really funny.
Amazing.
He had a very small part on Parks and Rec that I'd like to see him do some more comedy. He played the Archangel Gabriel in 5 episodes of a show, Good Omens, which I did not watch, but heard decent things about. And he's going to be on season 5 of Fargo, which seems like a very natural fit for him. Like that show and him is a match made in heaven for me.
I didn't even know they were making a season 5 of Fargo. That's exciting for me.
Yeah, it's going to be in the modern day too, much like season 1 was. And season 3, I think, was also modern day. Neat. So it seems like they're going back and forth. I wasn't a huge fan of season 4, but I still stuck with it because that's a show I'm quite fond of.
I skipped it, but I probably will eventually go back because I want more of that.
Louis Pullman, he stayed busy. We just mentioned he's been Top Gun Maverick and Outer Range. He was also in Press Play and the Catch-22 show that I think is now canceled. And he's going to be in the upcoming Salem's Lot movie.
That's exciting.
Yeah, Salem's Lot that's a scary fucking book.
Yeah, I'm ready to be.
I was hoping Mike Flanagan would be directing it, or maybe Scott Derrickson, but no, it is Gary Dauberman. So he has only directed Annabelle Comes Home, which is not good. And he's written, I don't know about this.
You're scaring me now, man. We were like getting all hyped up for Salem's Lot because it's one of those classic Stephen King properties that's, it's been a long time. It hasn't been done since the 70s or whatever. It's time to really let it rip. And oops, who did they give it to?
He wrote Annabelle, which I don't like. Not because it's scary, because it's bad. He wrote and directed Annabelle Comes Home. He wrote The Nun, which was terrible. And then he is the sole credited screenwriter on It Chapter 2. Now, if you ask yourself, what's the difference between It Chapter 2 and It Chapter 1? It's that It Chapter 1 is good. And he was one of 3 screenwriters on that. And he's the sole screenwriter on the Stephen pile of shit that is It Chapter 2. too. So, yeah.
He's had his hand in a lot of recently successful stuff, so you could see why a studio would be like, this guy knows what sells, but yeah, it's not necessarily for us old-timey traditional fans.
No.
Not clear we're going to get something good.
It's so like cliche to be like, give Mike Flanagan the Stephen King adaptation, but he does real good with them. I'm excited. We're going to be covering Dr. Sleep in October for Blasttober. So
yeah, I like Dr. Sleep.
And he did The Haunting of Hill House, which was not a Stephen King adaptation, but yeah, he's real good. Mike Flanagan is just knocking part of the park. And Scott Derrickson too, I like. Really excited to see The Black Phone. It's finally on streaming now, so I'm going to check it out.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, talk about Hemsworth a little bit. Everyone knows what Chris Hemsworth's been doing. I have in my notes here, Chris Hemsworth is busty with Thor. I think I meant busy.
Yeah, but have you seen his pecs?
Yeah, he's also pretty busty. He's got Extraction 2 coming up. I was a big fan of the first Extraction. I thought it was like a very back-to-basics action movie.
That was direct to Netflix, right?
Yeah, that was a Netflix movie, and so was the sequel.
But that was a perfect streamer action movie in that it was just really focused on the action and really exciting action, but like pure popcorn movie and really fun. I loved it.
Pretty brutal action, too. There's some stuff that happens in that movie that you don't exactly see coming because you settle into it being, like you said, a pretty by-the-book popcorn movie. But then there's some violence in that movie that is a little jarring in a good way. Like it snaps you out of the lull of like movie action scenes.
Exactly. As I recall, the director used to be a stunt coordinator, so it's very stunt focused, and it really takes some leaps, so to speak, in depicting action.
He's also playing the young Immortan Joe in Furiosa, which will be fun. I think that's a great role for him.
He gets to have his real accent.
Finally. All right, so let's talk about the box office of this movie. If you want to do a postmortem on this and figure out why it failed, crowded box office, the runtime, it's a rated R movie for adults, the type that doesn't get made much anymore. There's a lot of reasons, but competition at the box office really jumps out to me. So let's get into what else was out at the time and why it may have impacted this movie. So it opened in 7th place with 7.1 million, like we mentioned. First place was Venom, which was in its second week, and A Star is Born, also in its second week. But those movies both had pretty good legs. They made 35 million and 28.4 million respectively. So they're still snatching up quite a bit of the box office.
Yeah.
First Man also came out that week and took third place with $16 million. And First Man ended up being a flop in its own right, but it's a serious drama for adults. So between A Star is Born and First Man and Bad Times, if you're trying to court older audiences, you got a lot of good competition out there.
Sure.
Then Goosebumps 2 was 4th place, but I don't imagine Goosebumps 2 is taking a chunk out of this movie's box office. It would drop 52% to $3.4 million in its second week. Can you imagine a movie with this cast making $3.4 million in the second week? That's fucking crazy.
It's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is sad. It makes me sad. That week, the new Halloween opened, took first place with $76 million. I forgot how big that movie was.
Damn. Took all the oxygen, sucked it out of the room.
And you know what? This movie's marketing was creepy. Like you mentioned, you were a little scared of it before going to see it. So I could see people going into it thinking it might be more of a thriller than like a drama.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a thriller. It has thriller elements. It's a neo-noir, but it was marketed in a little bit of a spookier way. But A Star is Born and Venom were still making money hand over fist, so it would drop all the way to 15th place in just its third week.
Yikes.
They probably did not expect Venom and A Star is... Like, Venom had pretty bad buzz pre-release. They probably were counting on that being a flop, and A Star is Born. I don't know. Do we need to see that movie for the 7th time? But people really liked it. I liked it too. It was pretty good, honestly.
It's just bad timing. It's definitely a movie that was good enough. Okay, maybe there could have been a tighter version of this that was more of a box office hit, but it got elbowed out. It definitely needed some space to find its audience for people to figure out what it was, and there's no breathing room for it.
Yeah, and it's got a great cast, obviously, like one of the all-time ensemble casts, but I don't think anyone in that cast can open a movie on their own. Like Hemsworth outside of Thor, obviously, but is that Hemsworth opening that movie or is it Thor opening that movie, and Marvel in a more broad sense?
Right.
He's got some flops on his hands outside of the MCU, and in his defense, there's a small pool of actors that can open a movie just on their name, and the list is shrinking every day as they age out of leading man roles.
Yeah, this is a prestige movie in a blockbuster era, and it just couldn't swim in those waters.
I'm thrilled it got made, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I will cherish it always, but it's not hard to figure out why it didn't connect with more people at the time. I just hope people discover it. I won't say through this podcast, I don't think we have that reach just yet, but just over time, it's a bit of an oddity if you're scrolling IMDb and you're like, what is this fucking movie? Look at this cast. Look at this premise. This sounds great. I hope it is able to build an audience over time that way.
I hope so too. We're doing our little part. It's not nothing.
It's not nothing. It's probably not as much as we would hope. but it's not nothing. Did you have any grand summation of your thoughts on this movie, or did you kind of give it already?
I don't have a big final thought. I have a little piece of final advice, and that is to my two favorite characters from this movie who survived it. Father Flynn, a.k.a. Doc O'Kelly, or whatever his name was, and Darlene Sweet.
Your favorite character, whatever the fuck his name is.
Hey, to be fair, he didn't remember his name, so don't expect me.
True.
But a little bit of advice for them. Good job getting out of there alive, but don't leave money on the floor of the hotel. The fire wasn't that big at that point. I thought I remembered that like the rafters were coming down on their heads, and that's why they had to flee. They didn't. They left the place kind of simmering, and they left a shitload of money on the floor. Like, spend 90 more seconds just scooping up $100 bills, and you can live for years more in the $1969. Come on, guys.
Right. You're 20 feet from the front door. You can get out of there in a hurry if you have to. Take every last second you can to get all that money. Fuck, you spent 10 years in jail for it. You almost got yourself killed for it.
Seriously, yeah.
Priorities, people. All right. That was Bad Times at the El Royale. Did I say bedtimes because I'm sleepy?
It's
Is it bedtime at the El Royale? No, I'm excited for next week. It's a movie I have not seen pretty much since it came out. I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it on either DVD or looking at the release date, maybe even VHS. It's Son of Sam from 1998, the Spike Lee.
Summer of Sam.
Summer of Sam, rather. It's about the Son of Sam, but it's more about New York in that time period, how everyone is dealing with the tension and stress.
I've seen some Spike Lee movies, but I never saw this. I never even, frankly, heard that much about it, so it's going to be a fun, fresh one for me.
I remember it being controversial when it came out, but if I'm being 100% honest, I don't remember why. Like, people were mad about it, but I don't know what it was about it that they objected to. Just that there was some angry op-eds written.
Okay.
So kind of interesting to dig into the...
People were sensitive to Spike Lee back in the 90s. Like, now he seems like an elder statesman of American pop culture, but he was quite a prickly figure back in his day.
Yeah, he still is, but he's earned it now. He makes movies that confront systemic problems in America that not everyone likes being pointed out. Totally understandable why people got mad at him, but not his fault. He's just telling the stories. And I'm a big Spike Lee fan. Clockers is a favorite movie of mine. He's made a lot of movies I really enjoy. I like The Five Bloods that came out recently. Do the Right Thing, obviously, is like a summertime classic for New Yorkers.
Yeah.
So he's got a great filmography, but this is one that's, like I said, I've seen it, but I couldn't tell you the first thing about it. So it'll be like watching it for the first time. And I'm excited because I'm a native New Yorker, and I like movies that deal with New York because LA's got plenty of movies, Ian. It's time for us to have one on the docket.
Yeah. Show me what you guys are about.
They even took one of our best comic book characters and sent him to fucking Tampa for the movie. So this is
that's New York erasure. Yeah, exactly.
I'm finally getting our due. Underappreciated New York, city that never gets any press.
You should start spreading the news.
All right, so that was Bad Times at the El Royale. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe if you're enjoying the podcast.
Please.
Follow us on Twitter at BlastZonePod. You can email us blastzonepod@gmail.com if you want. No pressure though. And we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.